section of chapter 4. And this is, I feel like I say this all the time. This one's near and dear to my heart. I feel like I say that like every week, every time I do this. But anyway, this one's about relationships and the importance of relationships in terms of your in terms of your well-being, your satisfaction, your performance. I remember that there was a day many moons ago. I would say something in the range of like 15 years ago. Probably about 15 years ago. That I had the realization sitting in a meeting that people within Big B Nation were going to be and are some of my primary relationships of my lifetime. And that realization pretty much changed everything for me. And that was, we moved into our relationship with Nathan Havey and all the work we did with Nathan. And it's something that the relationships are, to me, are the most important sort of, for lack of a better term, currency in the world, right? Like we all have that with each other, and the better we are at nurturing and building the relationships amongst ourselves, and then who we touch in the outside world as within Big B Nation and beyond, is critical to our success and critical to what we do. And John mentioned customer service. I like to think about it as when you're engaging somebody and you have a relationship with them, a positive relationship with them, and you feel good about that relationship, you want to perform for them. Like, it's like if my aunt called me and needed something from me, like I would bend over backwards to make that happen for her, and it's because I cherish that relationship, and I want to be of service to her based on that relationship. It's one of the things that I've prided myself on in my life. If I look at my relationships, the most the most obvious one here at this company is my relationship with Bob Fish, going back nearly 30 years. But plus there's so many people in the organization with 10 years of 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. And I find, those relationships are incredibly important to me. My relationship with John Gilkey goes back easily 25 years. Plus my best friends and my parents and my brothers. And so anyway, that's what this chapter is about. And to relate that to business, what does it do for us in relation to business by focusing in on the power of our relationships? It's when you have relationships with people, strong relationships with people, there's sort of an air of acceptance, forgiveness, willingness to absorb things that maybe you wouldn't. And that relationship extends to us as coworkers. It extends to our customers. It extends to our consumers. It extends to our vendors. And a quick story from very, very early on was that, Bob had worked with Cisco way back when he owned the Flapjack restaurant. And he had a relationship with them, and they knew him through his work at the Flapjack. When Bob and Mary started the very first store, Cisco, based on the relationship with Bob, was willing to make a bet and produce paper cups with our logo on it and store them. And that doesn't seem like a big deal, right? But it was a really, really big deal because, Bob and Mary didn't have to extend the money to buy them all in one time. They didn't have to find a warehouse to put them in. They didn't have to distribute them. Cisco bought them, Cisco put them in the warehouse, and Cisco distributed them to the original store. And so we had a branded cup early on, very, very early on, when most coffee shops that would start out wouldn't have a branded cup for years and years and years, if they ever hit the volume where they could justify a branded cup to somebody like Cisco. So that relationship had a very positive impact on the business at the start, in startup, when Bob and Mary were getting going, and it was because Bob had built that relationship with Cisco and with the Cisco rep, and they trusted him, and they believed that he would. And look, we're still doing business 30 years later. It's pretty incredible, frankly. I talk about my dad in this chapter. My dad has this diner in Brighton, Michigan that he goes to, and he's been going there since I was a kid. That's no joke. Since I was, probably 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, he's been going to this diner. He used to go there every Friday with his banker when he had his business, and he still goes there today. All the waitresses know him. They call him by name. They know me when I walk in the door, and I make a point of they not only do they know me, but my dad knows like the waitresses' kids' names and where they're going to college and what they're up to, and it's frankly pretty extraordinary to go to this place with them. And I talk about what would happen if like a brand new shiny diner opened across the street. Like for my dad to go in there, you'd have to shoot him. He'd have to be dead, and then you have to drag him into that new shiny diner by his feet, because it would be an act of disloyalty to these people that he has this long-standing relationship with. And I know that's a dramatic example, but I think that that's the power of building relationships with your customers. The staff, they all have relationships together. I always used to know that we were winning at retail when customers would come in and introduce with family members and introduce us to their family members. Hey, this is my brother. He's in from out of town. I wanted to bring him in and introduce you to him because I talk about this place so much, and I wanted him to try the coffee. Or a lot of times like parents would bring their adult children in, to introduce, and it, like, to me, I knew we were winning when that kind of stuff was happening on a regular basis. There's a story I remember of yes, it was a woman who came to a discovery day. She was seriously considering becoming a franchise owner. We walked all the way down the path with her. At the end of the day, she ended up not becoming a franchise owner, but she got introduced to us. She lived in Wisconsin, I think, and she got introduced to us by our UPS driver. And our UPS driver used to come into our building, and we used to, this was back in the day when everybody had to take a shift at the front desk, right? So you got your, whatever it was in the interval, you got your shift that you had to sit at the front desk and answer the bat phone and greet people walking in the office. And this made such an impression on this UPS driver that he'd walk in, there would be Bob Fish sitting at the reception desk, or anybody in the organization. Every day you'd walk in, there'd be somebody different, right? And the theory on that was, if you had to take one shift every 40 days, you could be pretty fired up out there, right? But anyway, we built this really strong relationship with this UPS driver, and he said to his sister was wanted to open a franchise or was considering going into business for herself. And he was like, oh my gosh, you have to meet these Bigbie people. Like, you have to meet these Bigbie people. They're crazy. They're awesome. But we built a relationship with him, and, we nearly ended up with a franchise owner out of that. Right. So again, power of relationship. And one last quick story. I had a lawyer, and it was in a, what's it called? Family law issue when I was pursuing custody of my son, and she and I got super close. Her name's Jan Cunningham. And, she called me one time. We were talking some things over, and God, I'm getting choked up even telling the story now. She stopped me mid-sentence, and she said, Mike, I want to give you some advice as if you're my brother, not as if you're my client. And then she proceeded to give me this incredibly solid piece of advice that I'll never forget forever. And that was based on the relationship that we had built. And, I was getting her very best. Like, I was getting how she would be treating her brother. And like, to me, that was like the biggest compliment in the world, is that she wanted to share that with me. So that's the power of relationships. And I figured I'll just close. I wanted to close by reading the last paragraph of this section. And so I will here. Business is about showing up, living up to your commitments, genuinely caring about people, all of your people, and being a good person. In my opinion, when you go into business, you are making a lifelong commitment to all of your people, to all of your relationships. If this isn't your mentality, I think you need to explore this idea of a business in greater detail. I think businesses can be successful by cutthroat and ruthless, but in the end, I don't think they're sustainable. I think this mentality starts at the beginning during startup, and you have to decide what kind of company you want to run. And I think that, to me, summarizes the mentality that Bob and I brought into this business. It's always been about relationships for us. I think the tenure of so many of the people that are within Big B Nation represents that. And I think it's one of our primary superpowers in the world, is maintaining and building strong, powerful relationships. So that's the end of chapter 4.